Welcome back to our latest explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a fascinating, globally recognized text to unpack its really unique psychological and spiritual framework for achieving your goals. We're looking at Ryuho Okawa's The Laws of Success, a book that takes a highly specific and, honestly, almost counterintuitive approach to ambition and personal growth. If you've ever felt like you're your own worst enemy, or just somehow standing in your own way, well, the concepts we're about to explore might just completely change how you view your path forward.
Now, just to put things into perspective, Ryuho Okawa's work operates on an absolutely massive scale. We aren't just talking about a niche self-help booklet here. This is a major spiritual guide from an author who boasts over 100 million books sold worldwide. When a text reaches that level of global resonance across so many different languages and cultures, it's crucial to figure out exactly what chords it's striking with people. What is it that's drawing millions of readers to these pages?
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the ultimate success theory. 2. Conditions for true success. 3. Overcoming self-destruction. 4. The joy of the soul. And finally, number 5. Moving forward with courage.
Let's jump right into section 1, the ultimate success theory.
Right out of the gate, this book positions itself as a comprehensive guide for high achievers. And there's this bold yellow band across the bottom of the Japanese cover that translates to a pretty powerful statement. It says, "The ultimate success theory filled with overwhelming light." This is our first real clue about the text's DNA. It's framing success not just as some cold material pursuit for wealth or status, but as a deeply spiritual journey. That phrasing, overwhelming light, it suggests clarity, enlightenment, and leaving behind the shadowy hidden obstacles that typically hold us back.
And what's really interesting is how Okawa blends those big, overarching spiritual ideas with super practical, day-to-day business concepts. I mean, look at this scope. It goes from deep philosophical questions like, what is true success, right down to incredibly grounded advice on how to be successful at work and thoughts for developing a business. It's literally trying to provide a complete, holistic blueprint for modern society, effectively bridging the gap between the boardroom and the soul.
And the conceptual anchor for all of this is beautifully captured in this quote. When you make this book the lighthouse light of your life, your future hopes will surely become reality. I love that analogy. A lighthouse doesn't actually walk the path for you, it just reveals the safe passage through treacherous waters. The idea here is that guided, spiritual illumination is the absolute key you need to turn your raw hopes into tangible reality.
Which brings us to section 2, conditions for true success.
In Chapter 2, Okawa lays out a really profound framework. The crucial takeaway here is that true success isn't just about, say, crafting a better business strategy or simply waking up an hour earlier every day. It actually requires a major internal shift. Before any outward action you take can be truly effective, you have to conquer your own hidden psychological roadblocks. It's very much an inside-out approach to ambition.
Let's look closer at those roadblocks in section 3, overcoming self-destruction.
This concept is incredibly counterintuitive to how we normally think about drive and ambition. Okawa posits that to achieve any kind of lasting success, we first have to recognize and then confidently overcome what he calls self-destruction, or jiko hakai in Japanese. But he doesn't just define this as making a few simple mistakes. He defines it as an underlying unconscious human tendency to actually love our own misfortune. Think about that for a second. It's the idea that deep down, a part of us might be actively self-sabotaging because the familiar feeling of failure is somehow safer, or maybe more comforting than the totally unknown territory of actual success.
It brings up a fascinating and honestly a pretty uncomfortable question to reflect on. Are you secretly harboring a tendency to love your own unhappiness? It really challenges us to examine our setbacks objectively. Like, are our failures truly due to external factors? A bad economy, a difficult boss, just bad luck? Or is there an internal, unconscious grip on self-sabotage that's actually pulling the strings?
So how do we fix this? That's section 4, the joy of the soul.
Once you actually acknowledge that inner obstacle, the text introduces the specific spiritual resolution you need to break free from it. According to Chapter 2, you can't just magically will yourself out of self-destruction. Instead, true success has to be built on a foundational premise, which he calls the joy of the soul. This literally means finding deep spiritual fulfillment through the act of making others happy. It's all about shifting your ultimate motivation away from your own ego and redirecting it toward elevating the people around you.
So we're basically dealing with two opposing forces here. On the left side, you've got self-destruction, this inward focus, a dark loop of loving your own misfortune. And on the right, you have the joy of the soul, an outward focus, finding light and joy in making other people happy. This comparison perfectly highlights the necessary mindset shift. You defeat that inward, self-sabotaging tendency by completely overwhelming it with an outward, spiritually generous worldview. You just can't hold on to self-destruction if your absolute primary driving force is the genuine happiness of others.
All right, let's tie this all together in Section 5, moving forward with courage.
How do we synthesize these deep philosophical concepts into actual forward momentum in our everyday lives? It builds into this highly practical, three-step formula drawn directly from Chapter 2. Step 1. You have to establish the premise of the joy of the soul. Find your joy in making others happy. Step 2. Firmly grounded in that premise, you can confidently overcome your self-destruction and that sneaky tendency to love misfortune. And finally, Step 3. Now that you're free of self-sabotage, you can move forward with courageous action to realize your goals.
As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought derived straight from Okawa's framework. I want you to ask yourself honestly, are you unconsciously holding on to misfortune, or are you truly ready to unlock your own success through the joy of others? Keep this lighthouse light in mind as you pursue your own highest goals. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.